All right. Does everybody see my first slide there? RF exposure update?
No.
No,
Nobody's seeing it, eh?
Mm-mm.
Well, that's interesting. Well,
see, David, he never changes. He never changes it.
okay, we'll go back to it again. All right. Now do you see anything different?
Yes, you're good.
All right. Very good. So we'll get rid of some of the stuff off to the side. We're going to talk about the RF exposure update, and it's not as bad as you might think that it is. There's some things that changed and a lot of things that didn't from previous to that. So that's what I'm going to speak to this evening. And these FCC requirements were effective in May of 2021. I'll give you a brief historical overview of what happened, present the revised FCC requirements, talk about how those might affect you and your station. I'll show you a part of an ARRL video presentation that you can watch online if you want to go to their website. I'll show you an excerpt from that kind of contains the most important parts, at least in my opinion. I'll present some useful reference information. There's some examples I've got that I think will be helpful to you. And then I have a couple of closing comments and we'll open up for Q&A. Back in the 1990s, FCC issued requirements for RF exposure evaluations for all stations, broadcast stations, land mobile stations, public safety, and all services, including amateur. So compliance was required for all amateur stations since January 1 of 1998. And if you remember your last renewal of your license, it's been long enough now, all of you have renewed, and you may recall on the bottom that says, yes, I agree to comply with the FCC RF exposure requirements. So back in 1998, when this was first introduced, most amateur stations were exempted, and I'll show you why on that in a couple of minutes. And here's a set of the graph. It says I found it's marked old news, but it's really not. It's the same thing that applies today. But it talks about the power density that's allowed over the various frequency ranges and so on. And let's see here. So you can see for the ham bands and so on why down at the low frequency bands on 160 meters, it's a fairly high level that's allowed. Then when you get up to the end of the 10-meter band, then the exposure or the allowed RF level comes down some, and then when you get to 300 megahertz, it goes back up again. So we'll see how that goes. Here's a chart that shows what the allowed. This is the old chart that said that if your power was exceeded these numbers, then you had to do an evaluation. If it didn't, why you didn't. So I think you can see there on all of the HF bands, for example, if you were running a 100-watt transceiver of some sort, unless you got on 10 meters, why there wasn't any kind of a problem. And the same way on the VHF, all the bands there, why the sensitivity was higher, but then you got up to UHF, it started climbing again, and so on. Okay. Now there's a publication that's been put out by ARRL. It's really good. It presents the topic in some real detail. If you want to get into the technical details in the back, it shows some really practical methods of determining compliance. I think I can show you some even simpler ways than that. There are a lot of examples in there. And at one time, this was a book you would purchase from the ARRL, but now it's a PDF file and it's available free from the ARRL website for people that belong and so on. It's been prepared by Ed Hare. I think all you know him. He's a guy that runs the lab and does other stuff, and he sits on some of the standards committees and so on. He's a really very knowledgeable guy. Yeah, there's a picture of the cover of it and so on. I don't have it in color, but it's a book. I'd say it's probably 5/16 of an inch thick, and it's just jam-packed with information. So if you want to get into the technical details of it, that's your opportunity. Effective May the 3rd of 2021, which is what, about, year and a half ago, the requirements for amateur station RF exposure evaluation were revised by the FCC. There were no longer any evaluation exemptions from that list I showed you earlier, the 1998 list. So that meant that amateurs have to look at it too. And the evaluation processes and everything that's in the ARRL publication still fully apply to what's going on and so on. So that's there. But now it's no longer, hey, I'm exempt. I'm running a 100 watt HF transceiver. I don't go above 15 meters, and I don't have to worry about it, but not anymore. So if you previously did some sort of an exposure evaluation and so on, those are grandfathered until May the 3rd of 2023. If there haven't been any changes to your what's called your station RF profile. If you've changed your power or made modifications to your antenna, then you need to have an updated exposure evaluation. So new stations and those that have modified their RF station profile need to perform an RF exposure evaluation. And the way the FCC rules read, it's, quote, prior to be placed in service, end quote. So that means you put something up and you want to get it on the air and you haven't done the evaluation. Technically, you got a problem, but I don't think anybody's going to say word one about that. And I certainly, when I make changes here at my shack, I certainly have this in mind. I think you'll see later on that it's not a matter of having, on hand any necessarily any paperwork or anything like that. Okay, the ARRL is heavily involved in this RF exposure issue. They have representatives in the FCC and the IEEE standards committees and so on. There's updated publications available on the ARRL website, including frequently asked questions and so on. And there's also you might want to write this down if you've got your June 2021 QST magazine handy. You might go back and look at an article. It's on page 66. I think it's good reading. There's a copy of the article, but it kind of gives you an overview of what's going on. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to show you a video. This may be kind of crude as I go from one source here to another, but there's a video that I have that I've truncated, and please keep in mind that this was recorded on May the 4th of 2021. This is the day after the day of the rule change. So it's kind of a hot topic at that time. So let's see what we can do here. If I can. All right, let's see here. Come on. All right. We'll try to get back into the PowerPoint presentation now. And let's see here. Okay. Everybody hearing and seeing okay out there, Lynn?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay. So there's a couple of important points I want to pull out from the presentation. It kind of duplicated some of the things I said, but the controlled or occupational presence is measured over a 6-minute time frame, and the exposure limits are a little bit lower. The uncontrolled is, the limits are higher for that. The uncontrolled is your general population, your neighbors, anybody, and that's measured over a 30-minute time frame, and the sensitivity is a little bit higher. So the question is, do you need to perform an evaluation? So there's several evaluation tools that are available. There's 3 there that were mentioned in the video, but there's also one on the ARRL website, which I prefer. It's much easier to use, and I think it's. I'm going to use it for the examples I'm going to go through with you on this. So it's highly recommended. The one from the Lake Washington Ham Club is good, but the one I like about the ARRL one is it's pretty easy to put the information into it, and it comes back with how close you can get to the antenna. So if you're further away than that distance, it's all taken care of. You don't have to play games with any distances or anything. So let's do a couple of examples here. I'm going to I've modeled my own station here at N7PV. I use the ARRL calculator. Worst case is 400 watts PEP. I have an amplifier, a low power amplifier I use. Contesting SSB, so that means a 40% duty cycle. I've got a 94-foot non-resonant dipole at about 45 feet with a ladder line feeder, a current bal in, and I use a tuner. And I've done these calculations for 20 meters and so on. I'm proposing that you use a simplified calculation approach. Don't worry about the feed line, tuner, or balun losses. They're relatively low. If you put those in, you're just going to get a better number out. So if you look at the way we're proceeding here now, you're going to get kind of a worst case number. And if you're inside, your distances work out okay, you don't have to do anything any further. And you know that the actual situation is a little bit better than that. So here we go. I put in the 400 watts, the conversational SSB, transmit for 5 minutes, receive for 10. I thought that was a good thing. Antenna gain for a dipole is 2.2 dB. And I put in the operating frequency is 14.25 in the middle of the phone band on 20 meters and so on. And I allowed ground reflections. So for a controlled environment, that's for the hams and your family and so on, the minimum safe distance is 3.7 feet. So that means you could be within 3.7 feet of this antenna and you're still in compliance. You get closer than that, you've got an exposure problem. But if you're further than that away, you're okay. Well, with the antenna being 45 feet in the air, I don't think there's a problem for anybody. And if you go down to the uncontrolled environment, the neighbors and so on, the minimum safe distance is 5.2 feet. And again, with the antenna being up 45 feet, well, I don't think there's much of a problem for anybody. So we're in good shape. And I think you could see there, I could probably raise the power considerably. I could probably easily go to 1,000 watts or 1,500 watts, which is, 6 or 7 dB increase and so on. And I don't think that distance is going to come up too much higher. Okay, here's a kind of a worst case model for a high power station. And and again, another arbitrary example. And I use the ARRL calculator again. So I'm going to a full gallon, 1.5 kW PEP. I'm on RIDI or digital, which is 100% duty cycle. I'm using a tri-band beam at 45 feet, a low loss feeder, and operating on 10 meters. So all of those are the worst case numbers. So again, let me go back here. I'm assuming that there's no losses in the feed line or whatever. Certainly there are, but I would think that, those probably are less than a dB. If you're running that kind of power, you probably put the right stuff in to go with it. And I think that we have to also keep in mind that it's a directional antenna. So the strongest RF signal is going to be in the aiming direction of the antenna. And we'll see that this configuration of the operations might need some changes to be compliant. So here, again, the same numbers in the 1,500 watts, the 100% duty cycle, 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, antenna gain of 10 dB. That's probably a little high. It's probably more like 8 or 9. But I put that again, we're kind of looking at worst case example, and I put us in the phone band on 10 meters and so on. So the minimum safe distance for a controlled environment is almost 50 feet. And if you look down, excuse me, I'm kind of blocked with something here. And the minimum safe distance for the uncontrolled environment is 85 feet. Well, if you're up on a, if you got a 40 or 50 foot tower and so on, if you're not off the front of the antenna where it's aimed, well, I think you're all right. But if you're aiming it into the side of an apartment building that was next to you and you're going right into the 3rd or 4th floor of the apartment building, then you might have some kind of a problem. Again, this just gives some idea about what happens and so on. You can certainly be more refined with the calculations, especially for the losses in the coax and all of that, and for the antenna gain. But I think this shows you how worst case, this FSK or RIDI and so on, why that's 100% duty cycle, and that's where the problem comes in. Okay, for closing comments, mine are that for most amateur stations, the chances of having an RF exposure problem are very low. I don't think that they're very high, but you need to do it. I remind you, there's no need to file any information with the FCC. I just think it's important, as the other fellow, the previous speaker talked about, it's to have it available if it's needed. And it's certainly information that could counter any RF emission level concerns by a third party like a neighbor or something like that. And you can certainly go to the ARRL website for any further information and guidance. If you want more information, certainly Ed's book from back in the late 80s is still right on with respect to means and methods and technically what it's all about. And people that want to study it more, why that's they can do that. So I'll move to questions and answers, and we'll go from there.